Welcome to Burning River Radio. And I know it's a Louis J. Gomez thing, but I really think that we should start doing our show, do the All Dudes, All Nude podcast. I think that's the only way that everyone's going to understand why I call him a whole lot of lotta.
I'm pretty sure there's a lot of reasons they don't understand, and one of them is not that.
I'm Joe Koblitz. You can follow me on Twitter at Burning River BB. He is Justin Lotta. You can follow him at JL_baseball. I'll say that for later. Anyway, it's been a decent week. I don't really want to talk about what happened this week too much because it was kind of uneventful. I'll say maybe the biggest thing happening right now is that despite the Twins sweeping the Indians last week, which we talked about last week, they keep losing ground in the Central, and the Twins really do suck. And I think, I mean, our preseason predictions were like Indians, then maybe Tigers and Royals, and then the Twins and White Sox suck at the bottom. And I think every day we get closer and closer, with the exception of the Tigers really sucking as well. We get closer to that with the White Sox and Twins going down, the Royals coming up. I think that matters more to the Indians winning the Central than them actually winning games at this point.
Are other teams sucking?
Yeah, I mean everyone else is so bad. It's not like any other division in baseball. Maybe I should take that back. It's like the National League Central.
Everybody's bad.
Or it's more like the National League East, where you've got one great team and everybody else sucks, so it doesn't matter. So you just blow them out. I mean, it's not like Houston has been significantly better than everyone else in the West. It isn't that Texas sucks or whatever. The Houston's been so much better than everyone else, and the Angels have been pretty good recently.
I don't know. Texas is pretty bad. Their bullpen's kind of.
I mean, every team has flaws. You can pick apart, like especially these middling teams down towards the Baltimore,
right.
Sitting in the middle of the AL East. Their starting rotation is a fucking joke. It's awful. I mean, and without Britton, their bullpen isn't much better. So every team has that issue. To be, and most of them have decent strengths too. I mean, offense is up everywhere, so it's funny.
I would say the good teams have two strengths, and the bad teams have maybe one.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, the Indians obviously, to me, they have three. They're strong across the board. Defense is their worst area at the moment. But
the 4 and 5 spots in the rotation are still not great.
Yeah, the defense is improving, and I think, honestly, I'm not worried about the rotation at all. Those will be back in about a week. And don't even talk about his rehab start because I don't care about that. It's irrelevant.
We can talk about that because I want to talk about the rotation at some point. It doesn't have to be today, but
if you were there, we could talk about it. I want to talk about the All-Star game.
Let's do it. I love the All-Star game. I like it because there are 5 Indians going, and we haven't seen that in 13
I love the
years.
All-Star game. I love the All-Star game because it decides home field advantage in the World Series.
No, it doesn't.
What?
You're giving out wrong information. We can talk about that too. Stop giving out wrong information.
No, okay. Yeah, they can that. And I was probably one of the very few people who liked the fact that they changed that when Bud Selig was sitting in the crowd as the game tied, and they canceled it back in 2002, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And I know that because I just did a top Indians All-Stars, which you should check out on BurningRiverBaseball.com, top single game All-Star performances. And on that list was Omar Vizquel from 2002 because he was the one that tied that game.
Oh, wow. I did not remember that.
I don't know. He hit an RBI triple, I believe it was, and he tied that game, which I didn't remember either. I had to look up all the
I'm with
stats.
You. I like that it decided. I didn't necessarily like that it decided home field advantage, but I like the game meant something because if not, you're just kind of playing. Now, then you just become the Pro Bowl or the NBA. Actually, not the Pro Bowl runs around. In the NFL, you got half the league pulling out because they got a foot sprain or a hangnail.
Well, the Pro Bowl's poorly timed because now the teams in the Super Bowl who should have the most players
best
in
team.
the Pro Bowl.
Right.
But I mean, that's beside the point. I mean, I used to watch the Pro Bowl every year, and I always hated it. I never watched the NBA All-Star game. I like the skills competition, which I don't even know if it happens anymore.
That's what the MLB becomes without the MLB All-Star game becomes without it meaning anything anymore. Is it becomes like the NBA, except for you really can't not play defense. I guess you have to go catch the ball. You can't just. I guess you can half-ass right into a fly ball if you really wanted to, but
well, no, I like the defense in the All-Star game is usually pretty good in baseball's All-Star game.
it is.
I remember some pretty nice outfield catches. Like there's been some slick plays on defense, and I'm not going to trash on that. I do think looking at the roster this year, fairly defensively sound. I think they did a pretty good job.
I always argue, just in general, if you want an All-Star game that's as close as to a real game as possible, it's always Major League. Every other All-Star game doesn't look like the actual game, the sport itself. It's just kind of a weird exhibition.
Okay, I can see that. Anyway, I guess just onto this particular All-Star game coming up. The rosters were announced today. The Indians have 5 All-Stars, like you said. They also have their first starting All-Star since Juan Gonzalez in 2001.
And it's
that's
not
a pretty big. It's a big deal. Yeah, it's a big deal because it's a popularity contest, and the Indians I never win a popularity contest for one thing, but the Indians also never win a popularity contest.
That's to do with LeBron.
Yeah, it doesn't happen generally. So for Jose Ramirez, of all people, to win a spot. And now I'll say this, if you look at the numbers, and I have an article coming out on Monday morning about the Indians All-Star, so I'm very fresh with all these numbers. Essentially 2 third basemen who even deserve consideration for being on the All-Star team, and both of them are on the All-Star team. It was Miguel Sano and Jose Ramirez. Nobody else was even close. There was a huge gap between those guys. So for the voters, when you're picking a third baseman, you were picking between those two, and that's what most people did. And so that's why Ramirez, up until the end of May, Sano had better numbers. And Sano was winning until the last day of voting, and Ramirez had an incredible June, and I think the people in Cleveland particularly got out there and voted online. And he got 80,000 votes in the last day. Ramirez did too, or 80,000 plus, more votes than Sano did in the last day to surpass him. And so I mean that's impressive and it's awesome. And I mean it's July 2nd, so I just had my player power rankings for the Indians come out yesterday, and Jose Ramirez was number 1. And last season,
Kluber, wow.
And at the end of last season, Jose Ramirez was number 1. So he's not only been the best player this year, but he's been the best Indians player for 2 straight years.
No argument.
He's a very.
You could put Kluber 1A or 1B.
I didn't in this particular on the power rankings. I didn't because of games played, innings pitched. I feel like Ramirez. Like, if you're talking about, like, in one particular game, who's more important, it's always going to be Kluber.
Well, but you also have to take into consideration Ramirez is on the field 6 or 7 days a week.
Well, there's an old argument there, and I remember somebody in one of the books I read actually put it out there, like, when you're talking about at-bats, talking about impact on in the game, the starting pitcher has an impact on every single at bat. The fielders have an impact, every once in a while, and the hitters have one every 9 every 9 batters to the lineup. So when you actually add up the plays that a player is involved on, it's pretty equal.
That makes sense.
As far as like pitchers and hitters have a very equal, amount. Now, obviously, if you're a leadoff hitter and you're playing shortstop, you're probably going to have more plays, or if you're playing first base, you're going to have more plays than the pitcher is. But in all, it's pretty equal. So I think with Ramirez playing the full month that Kluber missed an entire month, that he's got to be ahead right now. And of course, Kluber made the All-Star game too, and he's absolutely worthy. He's like he's in the top 4 in baseball in the American League. Sorry, and strikeouts, FIP, WAR, ERA. I mean, that's generally where K per 9. Like
And
the
what's his
stats you want to
record?
be. I don't. Who cares about his record?
That's my point.
I did look up Carlos Carrasco has 9 wins. He did not make the All-Star team. Carrasco is a top 10 pitcher in the AL right now.
He might still make it, though. That's the other thing, is Kluber's supposed to start Sunday, and we can talk about that, too, because the rules have changed a little bit. Kluber's supposed to start Sunday, which in years past would have precluded him from playing. So if he pitches Sunday, he supposedly isn't allowed to pitch on Wednesday. Tuesday. But the new rule says that it's up to the manager and the player, and he can go like 1 inning at most.
Yeah,
so, but anybody
pitchers don't throw more than an inning anymore anyway. But
yeah,
and I think my argument in the piece I wrote for Monday Morning was that if Carrasco deserved a spot, it was over Ervin Santana of the Twins. Santana's had a decent season. Like his straight up numbers, his ERA is good, his win-loss is really good, but his peripheral numbers are awful. His K per 9 is terrible. His FIP is terrible. His WAR is bad. Like he hasn't been that great of a pitcher. I just don't see.
I think he's been fine. I think for Ervin Santana's case, it's almost like maybe I don't know if I want to say like Bauer. Maybe it's Carrasco. You know, Carrasco's I think has had 2 or 3 bad starts, and the rest have all been really good. If you look at Santana's numbers, I think he's had 3 bad starts, and the rest have all been really good. And a lot of his numbers come from just the 3 bad starts. Same argument with Brian Shaw. Everyone, dumps on Brian Shaw because he has 2 bad outings that affect his entire stats, but the other 10 outings are great.
Yeah, I will say overall though this pitching staff is pretty solid. I'm not going to complain about any of that. The starting lineup I thought picked by the voters was very good. Incredibly, the outfield, number 1, 2, 3 in outfield are in votes were also 1, 2, 3 in WAR. Crazy how that worked out.
You know what I think is the best selection by the fans? And it's going to sound stupid to a lot of people. I think it's Corey Dickerson. I did not think
that was
Corey
an easy
Dickerson,
pick.
I think it was too, but the last update was not. He was behind by a lot of it, so he didn't have a lot of ground too. And then you had guys
Who was
like
he
Nelson
behind?
Cruz.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You had a lot of guys.
Well,
like
he doesn't
Nelson
have a name.
Well, that's usually what happens. We talk about it's popularity contest. Usually, what happens is guys like Corey Dickerson, who are having the best year at that position, don't get it. So, he plays for the Rays, which makes it harder for him to get in than most Indians. And he's not really a name, so that was a good selection.
And I would say for
a great year.
Yeah, and we don't really need to talk about the NL, but I am really excited that Zach Kozart
is going to get his donkey.
Shortstop. I mean, I don't care about that, but but Kozart, man, he's having a crazy season, and for a Reds player to win a popularity contest is even more crazy than an Indians because they're in last place. They're awful. I mean,
and that was over Corey Seager and who else? Trevor Story. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there.
Yeah, and he did it largely because of his defense. I believe the Reds still have the best defense in all of baseball.
Really?
It's not winning them games. But yes, they have the best defense. And I looked it up a while ago because I did that. When the Indians played the Reds, I did some research into it. And last year, they had one of the better defenses in baseball, but it was all like 3 guys. This year, it's much more spread out, and they've got a really good, their whole team defensively has been great.
Yeah.
So
that's
he deserves it. I'm really glad he's there. Got a couple D-backs. Robbie Ray for the Diamondbacks. I've been covering the Diamondbacks for Door Fun Sports, and Robbie Ray has been so ridiculous lately. I don't know that that's a story that's hit the American League.
It hasn't, no.
But Jesus Christ, that guy's lights out. He went like 3 straight games pitching shutouts, and it's just insanely good. So
yeah.
Those are a couple guys that I like on the NL.
If you play fantasy baseball, you knew that was coming this year, so it's not a surprise if you're a fantasy baseball player, or a good one anyway.
What's that, Robbie Ray?
Yeah. Robbie Ray was, if you were really researching for a good fantasy league, Robbie Ray wasn't going cheap, wasn't going late. So good for him.
Okay, well, this is really a breakout season for him.
Mm-hmm.
The guys I want to talk about, and going back to the popularity contest, is really weird because it looks like the Indians may have won a popularity contest. Now, I heard, and I didn't hear this. I don't know if it's official who picked the last reserves, but I believe the manager does not get to pick the final players on the team anymore. It used to be the fans would get the starters, the players would vote for the next group, and then the manager would fill in the rest.
Correct. Not like that anymore. Yes, it's gone. That's gone.
Not the case. So you can't say that Terry Francona just picked his guys.
Nope.
That he just picked Andrew Miller, Corey Kluber, Francisco Lindor, and Michael Brantley. Now, obviously, Kluber and Miller deserve to be there. However, there's a really strong argument that Lindor and Brantley do not deserve to be there, especially Brantley.
I think Brantley's more deserving than Lindor.
Well, when you look at the amount of people. Well, if you look at the amount of people who deserve their at the position, like they need another shortstop. So you look at the other shortstops, and the first one I'm seeing that deserves to be there is Andrelton Simmons, and I don't believe he's even on the. I don't think he's on the final five.
Simmons is
and
not,
there's and Mike Trout is the only Angel on the team, and he's currently on the DL. And I have seen them do this before, where a team had an all-star. That all-star was on the DL, and they didn't replace him with someone else from that team. So a team had 0 all-stars. I believe it happened to the Rays last year or 2 years ago.
That's not a rule. They don't have to do that.
Yeah, so if you have an all-star, that's your guy, even if he's not going to play because he's on the DL, which kind of gets rid of the whole purpose of the one guy per team rule. And Andrelton Simmons deserves to be in the All-Star game. He's having an incredible season. He's been better defensively than Lindor. He's been better offensively than Lindor. He deserves to be there. And I don't want to talk trash on Lindor because he's amazing. But he's really been struggling the last month or two and has not been playing very well. And it's really difficult to make an argument that Lindor deserves to be there over him or the 3 shortstops that are on the final 5 vote. It's Xander Bogaerts, Elvis Andrus, and who's the third guy?
I don't know. I didn't see. I don't know who the final 5 is.
I don't have it right here, but those 2, especially Bogaerts, deserves to be in. Like, just straight up. It's silly that he has to go through this whole voting process.
I would take Bogaerts, and then I would take Didi Gregorius. Yeah, I guess the other guy.
Yeah, Didi Gregorius. Didi Gregorius is the best defensively of that group, but to me, the All-Star game is about offense first. And I get, Lindor is a fun combination of offense and defense.
And personality.
Andrelton Simmons has been better. Xander Bogaerts is more offense. Obviously, Correa, who's a starter, is more offense. And he deserves it, too. He's been the best offensive shortstop in baseball this year.
Correa. The voters did not get that wrong.
So, I mean, you can't. I'm just saying, like, if for the first time ever, the Indians fans can't complain because their guy didn't get it, because all the guys who deserved it got it, plus 2 other guys who maybe didn't deserve it got it.
Okay, but it wasn't like it was a popularity contest. It was voted on by the players. I think that's what's interesting.
But that's what I think it is, a popularity contest. It's popularity with the players. And I think Lindor has gotten, especially with the Platinum Glove last year, he finished 2nd in Rookie of the Year. He was in the World Series. He was huge down the stretch last year. I think he's become, like, if you think about when I was younger and we were watching baseball, you had 3 shortstops. It was Jeter, A-Rod, and Nomar Garciaparra.
You forgot Miguel Tejada, but that's okay.
No, I didn't. There were 3 shortstops. When you watched advertisements for MLB, it was the 3 shortstops. They never talked about Tejada. He was not in that group. It didn't matter that he was better. There were other guys that came up Omar was before a little bit. He was a little older than those guys, so he didn't hit. These were the 3 offensive shortstops. So those were the 3 guys. And when Garciaparra fell off the face of the earth, he was still included in those guys. Like even when he was like on the Cubs, like when he was terrible late in his career, they still had it stuck in their head like those are the 3 shortstops in baseball. Those are the guys. And I have a feeling like that's kind of where we're at now. It's like Lindor, Correa, maybe Bogarts, maybe like there's a couple guys.
Seager. You're talking about just league wide, or is the AL? You also have Seager and Story.
Yeah, I think Seager is the next one. I think if you're going to talk about 3 guys, it's like Lindor, Correa, and Seager. They came up within a year of each other. They're similar in age. They're similar in talent, although obviously Correa's more home run friendly and less defensive compared to the other 2. But I think those 3 are kind of getting tabbed as like these are the 3 shortstops, and other guys like Bogarts, despite being a very good talent, are getting left behind.
Lindor still leads all shortstops in home runs, and he actually missed one today because of Comerica Park. It should have been a home run. I think I saw it a little bit of home run in 75% of the other parks in baseball. I think people see that, but I think it's a popularity contest, but at the same time, you don't think other players kind of recognize like who they think is the best? Don't you think that on some level they're saying, okay, well, I think we know Francisco Lindor is better than Didi Gregorius. I think
over the long run, he's better than Simmons too, obviously. But I think,
and this
is, I think this is where we can disagree on this particularly. And somebody else just tweeted something, and somebody tweeted just out that he didn't like that the All-Star game was only based on the first half of this season. He thought it should be based on the last half of last season and the first half of this season because obviously the last half of last season just kind of disappears. Nobody cares about it because there's no second All-Star game.
Right, Brian Maher, yeah.
So if you consider that, obviously then Jose Ramirez is a super All-Star, as is Corey Kluber.
Yeah.
And Andrew Miller, who was an All-Star last year, then continued that on throughout the rest of the year. So there's guys like that. But a guy like Michael Brantley, who didn't play last year, maybe would be considered less than somebody who did have a good second half last year. Like Mookie Betts is on the team as a bench player, but someone like that.
But there's no, even so, you can't preclude voters. You can't say, you're supposed to vote on this because you know what? Most of the time is even the Indians are guilty of this too, and you can see by the retweets is they're giving out prizes for their fans to say, well, show us your ballot with all Indians. So that's why Edwin Almonte got 500,000 votes. Like,
it makes me so sick. I hate that shit, and that's why as soon as I write multiple articles on the All-Star game per year because I really do like it, and I really do want the best players to be there. I want there to be integrity in this game. I watched so many games that were just filled with Yankees that didn't deserve to be there because they were Yankees. There were games where it seemed like every player on the team was either a Yankee or a Red Sox. And maybe that's somewhat true this year. But the Red Sox that are there, Chris Sale is the best pitcher in baseball this year, at least in the American League. Craig Kimbrell is the best reliever in the American League. In baseball. He's the best reliever in all of baseball. Kenley Jansen?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're both the best in the American League. Fine. They deserve to be in the All-Star game. You could say that Kluber and Miller are the second best, but the 2 best guys are on Boston. It just happens to be. Aaron Judge is the best player in the American League so far.
With Mike Trout being out, yeah.
Yeah, with Trout being injured. Which is getting kind of like what I said about Kluber before. You miss the playing time, you can't get credit for it. So these guys are great, and they deserve to be there. Maybe somebody said Dylan Betances doesn't deserve to be there. I didn't really look up his numbers, so I can't tell you.
He's had a couple rough outings, but no worse than Cody Allen.
Well, Allen's not there, and I actually think that those rough outings recently are good enough reason that Allen shouldn't be there. I'm not going to go out there and argue Allen should be in this game. I think
No.
his numbers I can count them real quick. 2, 3 relievers. There's 3 relievers on the entire AL team. Everyone else is starter.
Which
You
is a big
cannot say Allen.
difference from last year.
Yeah, usually they go with a bunch of relievers because they can match up. And I think if Francona had picked the team, he probably would have done the same.
Well, he had a lot of guys hurt this year. A lot of guys missed time too for relievers, so that could be why. You know, Chapman missed time.
Yeah,
The team just wasn't that great.
And as they see who doesn't qualify because they pitch too close to the game itself, they may fill those spots in with relievers instead of filling them with starters.
That's true too. I didn't think about that. I still think Carrasco has a shot in that sense too. I think.
Yeah, I do. I do too. And there were a couple other guys. Chris Archer really deserves to be there.
I think he's in the final vote, isn't he?
I don't think so. I'm gonna have to look at the stupid vote again. I know Mike Moustakas is.
So they're not doing pitchers in the final vote anymore. They used to do pitchers in the final vote, and they stopped doing that.
It's 3 shortstops: Logan Morrison of Tampa Bay and Mike Moustakas. And Mike Moustakas doesn't deserve it, so don't you vote for Mike Moustakas. Vote for Xander Bogaerts, and Justin wants to vote for Elvis Andrus.
I think Elvis Andrus, yeah.
Okay, so Justin says vote for Elvis. I say vote for Xander.
Team Elvis. He's in the building.
I feel like there's a musical component to this.
I don't know. I think that I don't know.
Caught in traffic.
Again, like I said, you can't tell voters that they have to vote based on 2017 only. Like it's a tough resume to build. Like Miguel Cabrera is not in it, and he doesn't deserve to be in it. But everyone says, well, Justin Smoke and Yonder Alonso, those guys deserve to be in it. Those guys were nobody this year.
I love Yonder Alonso. See, that's I prefer. Whenever I write on this and I say this guy deserves it and this guy's a snub or whatever, I'm only considering this season. I never consider anything except exactly what has happened this year.
I think there's
because
balance.
It's the 2017 All-Star game, and it's completely unfair. And I said this to that other guy. When I go through and I do my all-time Indians articles, a lot of times you'll see where a player had an incredible year and he didn't make the All-Star team. But then the next year, he had a shitty year, and he made the All-Star team. Well, it's pretty obvious what happened there. He made a name for himself, having his great year. They realized, oh, he didn't make the All-Star team, and the next year they put him in the game because player. Well, then he wasn't a great player. Put the guys in. The All-Star team should be a kind of historical marker. Like, these guys were great this year.
There's a carryover effect, yeah.
I feel like it should just be like. Well, but you should look back in time and see look up the 19 the one I have in my head is 54. You look up the 1954 All-Star game. And the guys who were on there like Al Rosen and Larry Doby, like you should be able to look at that and see that roster and be like, "Oh yeah, those guys were really great that year." It's a whole bunch of Hall of Famers. But those guys were great that season. And that's why they were in that game.
It's got to be the mix of the two then. Like you can't Miguel Cabrera can't go this year because he just is not good enough. But if he's a little bit better, even if he's not as good as Justin Smoke or Yonder Alonso, but he's still close enough to being that good, he gets picked because he's still Miguel Cabrera and he's still over the long run better. But because he's not having that kind of year, you cannot justify his spot.
Well, yeah, I don't think he deserves to be there at all. And I do think Yonder Alonso does, and I think it's a cool story. And I think now, when you look back at 2017, you're not going to say, oh, yeah, that Hall of Famer got another All-Star appearance that year. You're going to say, hey, remember that 1 year in his career that Yonder Alonso was incredible?
Well, look what happened to Brian LaHair. I mean, he was the Cubs' only All-Star. He had a great half because they had to have an All-Star. And he was never heard from again. I mean, God, he was playing in Double-A with the Indians in 2013.
Well, I got to look up that.
That could easily wind up being Yonder Alonso because he's not been good before this year. He's been a top prospect, but he's not been good. Same with Justin Smoke.
How about Stephen Vogt
last year.
He had a vote for vote campaign, I believe.
Yeah,
All-Star in 2015 and 2016.
DFA this year.
Cut by the A's, the worst team in the West, cut this year. And then he was picked up by the best team in the NL Central, and he's hit 2 home runs since, proving that Milwaukee is magical.
I don't know if it was last year or it was the year before that Omar Infante was hitting 240 and he had missed half the season. And he was number 1 fan votes because Kansas City had those 2 years of.
I think that was the year they won the World Series. So I think it was 2015 that happened. It wasn't last year. So it was 2015 before they won the World Series, but after they'd lost it, there was that huge upswelling of Kansas City fans. But he did not win the fan vote.
Right, he did not, but he was pretty darn close, and that's the thing.
Yeah, he was close, but some people remember it as he won the year that Omar Infante won an All-Star starting spot, but he never won it. It didn't happen.
I think
that there was talk about there may have been some shenanigans, some vote tampering.
Well, they did change the process after that year.
So yeah,
this year you can only vote 5 times a day up to 35 times, so you can only vote. I'm not going to do quick math. 5 times 35. That's as much as you can vote is 5 times 35.
Yeah, except
you can vote 175 times.
Yeah, except who has one email address.
Right. That's and that's a lot of people that got around it. That's the way it works. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a Tribe Time Now email address that I've never used before.
I know I have 3, including my college email still. So I can easily go out and.
If you're listening to this right now, you can email me at burningriverbaseball@gmail.com. I don't get much email there. If you have comments or whatever, I'd prefer you tweet me because then everyone can see it. But it's not like it's a private thing. All right, that's it. I think that's enough on the All-Star game. I wanted to talk. I don't really want to talk about it.
We should talk about Michael Brantley for a second, still. I think.
Did we? Well, but I think I made my point. I didn't say all the other guys who deserve to be there over him, and I've already shut my one thing that I had with a list of them. But there was a list of now obviously El Garcia made it too, and he absolutely does not deserve to be on this team. But he's the only White Sox representative.
Yeah, who else are you gonna take from there? Tommy Kahnle or David Robertson?
Probably Quintana, just for your Miguel Cabrera reasoning.
I guess, but he won't be a White Sox this time next month.
Yeah, so see those 2 guys are not as good as everybody else, and they're kind of fill-in guys. But I think they could also, Nelson Cruz is the other DH. He could possibly play in the outfield.
He just got hurt, so.
Oh, is he out? Okay.
Here's I think the Brantley thing is really interesting, just for the fact that this is his second All-Star game, so he's got kind of reputation. But I think he was a player vote. I don't know. I mean, he's been on the DL once this year already.
He's got respect. He's got respect from the players because he's been a great player for a long time, and because he came back from injury and is playing among the best players. However, he's not even the Indians' best outfielder. That's Lonnie
Chisenhall. Yeah.
And it's very obvious if you look at any numbers. Now, obviously, maybe these players don't like numbers. And if you're talking about who's going to be better by the end of the season, I would bet quite a bit that it's going to be Brantley.
Yeah.
I don't think.
That's fair. I don't know. I think it's from the storyline. I think it's good for baseball. But I don't know if it's good for baseball that Yonder Alonso made it. I'm not really sure. I want to say it is. I think, but from a hardcore fan's perspective, it is. But I think from a generic baseball fan who's not a nerd like me, maybe it's not so good because who gives a crap about Oakland because they're in last and they have a terrible stadium on the West Coast and whatever. But I don't know. Well, what about this perspective too? I saw this earlier and I thought about this. And I would assume if you're buying tickets to go watch an All-Star game, you're voting because you want to have some sort of say over who you're going to watch. I guess you don't get that in your hometown team, but in the All-Star game you do. If you're paying $200 for a nosebleed, do you want to watch Eric Hosmer or Miguel Cabrera, or do you want to watch Yonder Alonso or Justin Smoak? I mean, you want the absolute best player. you know. But what if the absolute best player is not having a great year? Do you want to see? Do you want to see a struggling Miguel Cabrera, or do you want to see a good player having a great year?
I feel like you
If
just jump back
paying
from
money,
jump back to the Cabrera thing, and when you're just talking about Brantley, I think there have been multiple outfielders that have been better than him this season on other teams.
All right, nobody's paying to go see Michael Brantley. They are paying to see Francisco Lindor. They're probably not paying to see Jose Ramirez, although they should be. I think they will be now. But I mean, if you gave fans a choice, like I mean, you give them a choice, but I mean, I don't know. I don't think anybody's going to sit there and name off Michael Brantley as one of the main 6 outfielders they want to see in the AL.
I don't know. It'll be. I think we'll see as the All-Star lineup always varies as the week goes on, as players get injured and step out and that type of thing. And we'll see. It's very possible that he will be deserving if you get a couple other guys like Steven Souza, JD Martinez, a couple guys who hit a little bit better than Brantley have this year. Should make the team first. But if those guys do make the team, then I got no problem with Brantley on there. I wouldn't add Chiz just because Chiz is better than Brantley, since you've already added Brantley.
Well, JD Martinez missed a lot of time too if you're talking about playing time. But
yeah, but his offensive numbers.
What else did you want to move on?
Well,
we're moving on.
There you go. Okay. Yeah, it's so stupid. I feel like I don't know if I want to look this up even or not. We were kind of involved. It's somewhat important. So I got this isn't the right person. Is Ryan McChrystal? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought he was with IBI, but apparently he's with Bleacher Report.
Yeah, he used to work for It's Pronounced Lajoie, and now he writes. I think he still writes for It's Pronounced Lajoie, but he's a NFL draft writer for Bleacher Report.
Okay, so he started something the other day that it kind of dragged in other people into, where he was kind of attacking Paul Hoynes, and I saw some things brought up, and not just by him, but other people were also getting into it. And now I can't find it on here, so I'm wondering if you deleted it.
Other local writers. There were other bloggers,
Other people in the area that we affiliate with, and some of our people themselves. And again, I'm looking at it now, and I'm not seeing it anywhere on his timeline. But so he was ripping into Hoynesy for things as far deep as when the Indians traded Felix Fermin for Omar Vizquel, Hoynesy was against it because they were getting just another shortstop.
And he was saying, "Why would you want a Gold Glove?" And the year they traded the year they traded Fermin, he had made like 23 errors.
So that was really, that was hilarious. Like an idiot could have seen that was a good move, and Hoynes back in 1992 or whatever it was. Deemed it terrible and a waste because they were getting just another shortstop. And honestly, that looks like when you write something like that, it's like you didn't even put any research into it because nobody is just another anything.
No, you mean no research
like,
behind that? Come on.
You should know, like, every player is slightly different, at least a little bit. So you should know that a player is slightly different. And that's not against Felix Fermin, but... It's funny. I'm not seeing any of that on his thing. I'll stop looking now. But so then that happened, and then a bunch of the Indians, let's call them the legitimate, or they think they're legitimate press, jumped up and backed up Hoynesy. And I feel like this is a little bit. We talked about Andre Knott fighting for his people last week, right?
Yeah.
Well, and it's not just Knott did it again today, where someone was ripping on Underwood for making mistakes, and Andre jumps in there and has to fight for him every second away. The fact is, Matt Underwood is a terrible announcer. And I can say that because I have MLB TV and I can listen to road announcers. I don't just have to listen to STO. Matt Underwood is awful. He's bad. And every year, Awful Announcing, which is a website that we used to be affiliated with, I guess we're not really anymore. But every year they do announcer rankings, and every year the Indians get a C or below. The only team in the Central gets worse announcer rankings than the Indians is the White Sox, and that's because everybody hates them. The Hawk. Everyone hates Hawk.
By the way,
Steve
that's
Stone.
every year, like close to last, and the Indians just won an Emmy. I'm sorry, Jensen Lewis, Al Pulaski, and Rick Manning, and Andre Knott, and Matt Underwood, they all just won an Emmy. Although I think it was a very specific Emmy that they did. So that's interesting.
Okay. Yeah, but honestly, I don't give a shit about awards because they're going to give them to
the nicest guy.
Well, it has nothing to do with baseball analysis. The baseball analysis on both Cleveland TV and radio is terrible. It's awful. Every single other team except for Chicago does it better. The Twins have a very entertaining broadcast, and they're much more enlightened statistically. That the Rangers may not be more statistically advanced, but they're much more entertaining than the Indians was. I watched that the other day when the Indians played Texas. So when people rip on Matt Underwood for not knowing that a fly ball to shortstop is not a home run, and for not knowing what day of the week it is or who's pitching, when he keeps consistently saying that Carlos Carrasco is either Carlos Santana or the other day he called him Mike Napoli, or he called Mike Clevenger Mike Napoli. Like
right, and then
he does this.
Something about do you congrats on your perfect broadcast? Like,
yeah, so you saw the same thing I did.
Yeah. Okay. So okay. Perfect broadcast aside, you get names right, you get cities right, you get days of the week right. I would hope. I mean, if you get a fact wrong or something like a small stat from like 1999 or whatever it is, fine. That's small potatoes. But a name and a city and a day and
yeah, you're talking about misremembering things compared to just obvious errors. And this is kind of getting off track because I wanted to talk about Hoynes. And all these guys defending him because he's been there forever.
Right.
Who cares that he's been there forever? He's been terrible forever. And I think the most perfect, there's no other perfect example, no better example for this than him talking about Yandy Diaz coming into this season. I've followed Yandy Diaz for a couple years statistically and reading people's reports on him. I didn't see him. We have Gavin Potter, who regularly goes to games in Akron. He followed him. I take his word on what happens in Akron. We had Kevin Gall up until this season in Columbus. Watching games in Columbus, I take his word on what happens in Columbus. So I knew that Yandy Diaz was a good defender. I saw Yandy Diaz in the Futures game last year. I saw him in the AFL. I saw him in instructional league last fall. I knew from personal experience, me physically seeing him on the field, and from reports from 2 or 3 of my writers, that Yandy Diaz was an above-average defensive player. And then all of a sudden,
there's national prospect writers who say the same thing.
And then Hoynesy comes out, and somebody actually asked me. I was at a spring training practice watching Yandy Diaz on the field, and somebody goes, "Oh, he's terrible defensively," and I'm like, "Who said that? He's not. Everyone has always said he's great defensively. Like maybe his bat isn't as good as his glove."
Actually,
who said that? And he goes, and the guy tells me Hoynes, and I go, "Oh, no, that makes sense then."
I hate to say this. I hate to defend Hoynes on this point, but the Indians did say that this spring. Terry Francona is guilty of saying it this spring.
Well, that's my point entirely. Is that he's runs with it because he has to. If he had seen Diaz play, and now this was an argument from one of those beat writers. I can't remember who it was. I think Jordan Bastian and Paul Asen. Is it Paul? No, that doesn't make sense. Paul Ossenmacher. Chris Ossenheimer were fighting for him. And Paul Ossenmacher was in there too. They needed him to knock out one of the left-handed internet writers. I think it was that guy Kevin. Never mind.
Kevin.
It was DAS.
Kevin DASD. Yeah. Oh God.
I think he's lefty.
I think he crawled back into his hole and left us. I haven't seen him in a while.
Okay, they brought in Ossenmacher to face him. Anyway. So one of those guys brought up the fact that they said something along the lines of what you expect Hoynesy to be at every single AAA, AA, single A game, every day throughout the year, and to have watched every single player. And somebody, it might have been you even, that responded to that and said, yeah, if he's going to comment on him.
No, that was actually Ryan. That was Ryan or Gavin.
That was right. Okay, and my point is, I don't get paid very much money. Pretty much not at all for running the site and the podcast and all this stuff. Up until this year, we had a guy in Columbus credentialed at many Columbus Clippers games. I have a guy in Akron right now credentialed going to many Rubber Ducks games. I don't have anyone in Lynchburg. I wish I did. But I have people who watch those, at least watch the stats and have an idea of what's going there. I have you. You're credentialed. You're in Lake County. Kate is also credentialed in Lake County. Mike is also credentialed in Lake County. Kate is credentialed in Mahoning Valley. I don't need a credential to go to, but I'm good with the people who work in Goodyear, and I go to most of the AZL games. My site has people at every single level of Indians minor league baseball except Lynchburg and DSL. You telling me the plain dealer can't do that? I can do it for free.
They can't because they won't pay anybody.
Well, so that's my point. So why would I listen to Hoynesy on anything? IBI has more people than we do. If you want prospect information, go to IBI. Yep. Come to us. Yeah. Go anywhere else. Everybody else has more information than Hoynesy. Hoynesy's a fucking idiot.
And that's the problem. See, that's because they know they don't have the information. They know that IBI or us or Did the Tribe win? I'm trying to think of other, whatever.
Yeah, I don't really want to plug at other sites because, obviously I want people to go to our site. I don't.
Right, but all of them
if you read the other ones. But I would say most of the websites, IBI is the one I'm not afraid to plug because everyone knows about it, and they have a staff of 20. They have people everywhere.
And good people.
And they have people following it all the time. I have people. If you live in Lynchburg, Virginia, or anywhere near there, please contact me. I need someone to cover the Hillcats. I can get you a credential. Just contact me, and we'll get you in there. I'd love to have somebody covering the Hillcats directly. But until then,
that's what Cleveland.com's afraid of. That's what Hoynes is afraid of. That's what Chris Ossenheimer is afraid of because they know the other guys have more information. But 20 years ago or 10 years ago, whatever, how long they've been doing it, nobody had more information. They had all the information, or at least that's how it felt to everybody who was reading them because there wasn't focused coverage on this stuff, and there wasn't a bunch of sites just writing about it in general. Now that there's so many sites out there that are writing about it, and there's, you involve analytics, and now you got people covering minor league games, interviewing players, tweeting about it, posting video, doing stuff that they didn't have to do 20 years ago because everyone just assumed they were the best and they knew everything. So
yeah, and I have to assume
that's why this happens. They're threatened.
Yeah, I have to assume that all their information is then coming from the team directly. And it's funny, I have a spreadsheet of a whole bunch of Indians milestones, and I update it all the time. And it's funny because sometimes you'll see an Indians beat writer or someone involved, Jordan Bastian or whoever, tweet a stat, like when someone hits a milestone. That's because they announce that in the press box. I keep track of all that shit on my own. So a lot of times I get stuff that they don't necessarily have because I consider it a milestone and they don't. So they don't announce it in the press box. And if they don't announce it in the press box, then these guys don't have it. But I'm keeping track of this on a day-by-day basis so I know when it's happening. You know, these guys, they'll all tweet out the exact same stat at the exact same minute. And I know they're doing it because Danny Cunningham will do it when he's up there. I don't want to
You
talk
got to
shit
follow
on
the
Danny.
herd, you know.
Yeah, so they'll all tweet the exact same stat at the exact same time, like they came up with it. And it's because somebody behind them said it. So I think a lot of the stuff where they're getting minor league information is coming from the exact same source. Don't trust that source. They're obviously trying to lie to you a lot. They were the ones that told you that Nakun was an elite defender. They were the ones that told you that Diaz was a terrible defender. You know, they're the ones that told you that Lindor had a litany of things to work on when he obviously didn't. They just wanted to push back his service time. All the time. Don't listen to them. We'll at least tell you the truth.
Or at least a different perspective.
Well, I mean, we'll tell you what we see. I mean, I can only tell as much as I see, and I'm trying to get better every day at what I'm doing. And when I'm watching games, I'm trying to get better, particularly on the pitching side of it. I've never pitched in my life. I haven't really evaluated pitchers, but I'm reading on it, and I'm doing as much as I can to really concentrate on what they do in the game to visually see what's happening rather than basing my analysis on statistics and really trying to focus on what the pitcher is physically doing with the baseball because statistics lie so much in the AZL. So I'm working on that right now. What is Hoynesy working on?
I mean, I will say it's probably not fair for him to know everything going on in the minor leagues. Most of those guys don't. I mean, they won't broach the topic sometimes. But the problem is there are more informed people. There are a handful of writers that are more knowledgeable on it. Like, I think TJ Zuppe, not to plug other sites, I think TJ Zuppe does a great job of kind of getting involved with everything. He knows a lot more. And Jordan Bashan, obviously, Jordan knows a lot more. He's also worked for the team website, even though he's not affiliated with the team. He works at MLB.com. But I mean, there are
what's
writers out
funny?
there who cover the Indians specifically, but also have a somewhat of a grip on the minors. And that goes back to the point. If you don't know it, don't make dumb assumptions. Don't give out wrong information. If someone asks you or there's some note, newsworthy note to put out there, whatever. But if you're going to interject your opinion, hopefully it's an informed one and not just whatever the Indians want to feed you or just whatever you think by looking at some stat.
Yeah, and that's funny.
Oftentimes
During
it's not
today's,
based on a stat. It's just some random opinion like, this player's bad at defense because someone said he was, so he must be.
Yeah, like Elvis Perez. But no, during today's Indians broadcast, Matt Underwood asked Rick. They were talking about Nick Goody and how amazing he was, and how the Indians got him for nothing but a player to be named later. And I swear they've had this conversation 3 times this year, at least, on the broadcast on STO. And they couldn't remember who he was traded for, which is Eric Algren.
Huh?
And
no,
when they finally brought him up,
now you just got information wrong, dude.
Oh, was it? Oh, I'm sorry.
It was Yorber Marquina.
I'm sorry, Yoiber Marquina.
It's Yogi Bear, as they call him in County, Yogi Bear.
There you go. So when they brought him up, Underwood said, "I've never heard of him." Yeah, I bet you haven't. That makes sense. Obviously, he was a relief pitcher in the minors, so why would he have heard of him?
Right. The conversation ended there, though, right?
Yeah, he's probably never heard of Grant Fink either. But I watched Grant Fink pitch 6 times in extended spring this year.
Pitch.
So I've got a nice. No.
No,
sorry, not Grant Fink. I'm messing up my.
Paul Hendricks.
I'm really messing up names today. No, I'm gonna.
You're not making a great argument for the point of our
podcast. I am just, but I'm not being paid.
Yeah. Are you thinking?
How do you not Grant Hawken? Grant Hawken.
Okay,
sorry.
Okay.
It was Grant. I had the Grant. No, Grant Hawken. I was going with relief pitchers. I don't know if Hawken is starting or not for the Scrappers now.
He's starting.
But I watched him a lot. He is starting. Okay, yeah, he was starting the whole time for extended spring, and he looked really good. But they'll never have heard of him. There's even guys like who's he in? He's in AAA right now. Lewis Head. I remember when they drafted Lewis Head in 2012, and he had a great year, and then he had a great next year, and really, like, he was always on my radar, like, really tight on Lewis Head. Now, Lewis Head is in AAA. If they were to bring up Lewis Head, everybody would go, who's Lewis Head? But I wouldn't say that because I've been watching him. I have him marked in 2012. I have him ranked. Like, I can go back that far. That's 5 years ago. I was writing articles on Lewis Head. So, like, the information is out there. You don't have to be ignorant.
Boy, there could be a lot of points we can broach on that topic, not just sports. But we won't go there.
Well, yeah, I can teach you some stuff next episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but like we said, Underwood brought up Marquina. I don't know how he found out the name. I'm sure it was in the transactions and in the game notes, but
well, no, they have a whole. I mean, just think the Indians booth, which obviously Andre not give so much credit to, they've got a whole crew of people looking up numbers and stuff for them. So whenever they say a number on the air, it's not because Matt Underwood went on Baseball Reference and looked it up. And in fact, I think there was another number today that they looked up and said this was the first time an Indians hitter had hit home runs from both sides of the plate twice in one season.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that somebody went on Baseball Reference's play index and looked that up.
Or Elias, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, that's the type of thing that you can look up on those places. And he was saying, it's not official, but our guys went through all the right channels to look it up. Well, of course they is. It's very easy to look.
Does he even know the channels?
Yeah, he doesn't know them because he doesn't do them. Like, they're very easy things to look up. And
okay, but I don't expect Matt Underwood to.
Not when he's live on broadcast, but I expect. Right. But I guess my point is, don't give him credit for the things he says a lot of the time, because they're coming from other people. They have a whole crew of people backing him up, and he still makes mistakes all the time. I got nobody backing me up.
There's probably a lot of things you don't want to believe or give credit to on broadcast, especially home broadcast. We talked that last week about homerism, just, I don't know, a lot of them are going to say a lot of the things that the organization wants them to say. And stats are stats. They are what they are. They're concrete if the Indians team website is looking them up or whatever, but it's a PR thing. It's broadcast to PR. That's why it probably is smart to watch away broadcasts. I don't know.
Yeah, and I like them. I love hearing what they say about the team, and a lot of times they'll really talk up the opposing players, especially when they're playing well. And the Indians do that too from time to time. They'll talk up an opposing player. I do. A couple years ago, again, awful announcing, but they did some research into which teams were the most homer friendly.
And they did Chicago White Sox #1.
Obviously, the Chicago White Sox were #1, but they were testing things like how often the announcers. It wasn't obvious stuff necessarily. It was like how often the announcers said certain words, and like one of those words was "we." An announcer should never say "we," and I believe that was a Herb Score thing. Herb Score always said, "Don't say we. You're not wearing a uniform. You're not on the team. It's not you. Don't say we." Matt and Rick say it all the time. And it's not just that. It's getting excited, not just – you should always get excited for an exciting play, and I think that's what Tom Hamilton does incredibly well. And some people don't like it when he gets excited when the opposing team makes a great play. I love it.
I agree.
It's a great play. Get excited. Like, you should always be excited about a great play no matter who makes it. I'll clap. Even like if an Indians player gets robbed, I'll still clap for that. Like, that's – if it's a great play, you got to clap for a great play. It doesn't matter.
If you're a baseball fan, yeah.
Yeah, you should be excited about that. So I love that Hamilton does that. But I think you'll find a lot of times that Underwood and Manning are very, very one-sided, and more so than almost any broadcast booth out there. And on FS1, I got to wrap this up here, but they were on national TV on Saturday on FS1 against Detroit. And I saw Indians fans saying, "Oh, I thought this was a Tigers broadcast the whole time." And listening to it, I thought they were very balanced. If anything, they were really spending way more time on the Indians than on the Tigers. I think that's fair because the Indians are in first place and the Tigers are the worst team in the AL. But I really think that they were much more favorable in the broadcast, the Indians. I just think Indians fans are so used to Matt and Rick just constant positives. Everything's good. They're winning the World Series every single day. Like they're so up the Indians' ass in positivity that if you hear anything else that's not biased, you consider it to be biased on the other side because you're so not used to it.
All right, well, the one thing that I thought they were good last night too. The only thing that really I thought stunk was how they didn't seem to understand the hit by pitches last night. They did a poor job of explaining that. I mean,
I thought they were
point.
fine. They said that was it Carrasco didn't intentionally hit him, and that.
Oh no, it was CJ Nitkowski saying that he didn't think Jordan Zimmerman intent. He didn't think that the intent was there for Zimmerman to throw at Santana.
I don't know that it was there either. I mean, well, obviously the reaction was different from the two pitchers because Carrasco obviously did not want to hit the pitcher. They were very clear on that on the broadcast. But you're never going to say on a broadcast he intentionally hit that guy. They definitely said it was more possible that he did than that Carrasco did because Carrasco was pissed. Like he was jumping around like, man, I hit him. I didn't mean to hit him.
And Nitkowski said, I'm just not sure you can there's an intent there. I don't know. It would seem pretty obvious.
That's fair. I think that's fair, though. You can't say anyone ever intended to. Even if he stares in, that's just a different attitude. Maybe he did. Maybe he was trying to throw inside and he accidentally threw it behind him. It happens. I've seen the guys throw a lot worse than that.
I think it was
a lot further. It may have been, but you can't say on the broadcast it was intentional. I think that they were really even. I think they were incredibly boring as shit.
Yeah.
And especially the Corey Kluber interview, it was like, you don't want to be called a Klubot, but man, then you're going to give that that interview and put everyone to sleep.
Well, they didn't exactly give him good questions. Yeah. I mean, I don't know who the partner was, but it was just, so Corey, you had a really good month of June. That's got to feel good. And Corey gives him the deadpan face, like, what the fuck do you want me to say? Like, yeah, I had
it was terrible. And the whole broadcast was very boring, but it was evenly boring.
That's where it's nice to have Andre Knott. That's one of the good things he does. He's got a good rapport with the players, and he's entertaining. He's funny, and he knows the game, and he knows the players. Yeah, no, I think he's far and away. I like Al Pawlowski, but I think far and away, Andre is.
Don't like Al Pawlowski.
No, I kind of.
But I'll say
far and away, Andre is. I think Andre carries the Indians broadcast. That's not even close.
I guess the last thing I was talking about on Saturday, or was it Saturday or Friday? No, it wasn't Saturday. It was against the Rangers. The reason I switched to the Rangers broadcast, which had CJ Nitkowski on it, and I can't remember who the other guy was, but I switched to it because STO brought Jensen Lewis in the booth for an inning, and as soon as they brought him in there, I was like, I'm done. I can't. They're not only not trying to fix the situation with Matt and Rick, they're making it worse by bringing in someone who's worse than both of them. And they have guys who are better. They had Brian Anderson. He was great, and they let him go. He was entertaining. He was funny. He was smart. They let him go. He was from Ashtabula, which is why I say those things. He's from Geneva, which is pretty much Ashtabula.
Yeah. Jason Stanford wasn't much better.
No, Stanford was awful.
Yeah.
I actually do like Brian Anderson. I think he's really funny. But then they have Andre Knott, and they don't bring Andre Knott up in the booth to do a whole inning. They bring up Jensen Lewis. So immediately, as soon as they said they brought him in, I switched over to Texas, and I got to hear this wonderful conversation of turning the Terrace Club into a Shark Tank and how they were going to get the sharks out of Lake Erie. Good TV. That's good TV. That's the type of announcing I want to hear during my baseball game. Honestly, I don't give a shit what they talk about. I'm watching what happens on the field. It really doesn't matter what they talk about. So if you're gonna talk about something, talk about putting a Shark Tank in the Terrace Club, and making sure it seals properly by using flex tape.
That's better than the Indians most days. Yeah.
It's better than anything I've heard on the Indian broadcast in a really long time. I mean, the Indians, the pitchers are trying to help it by making all those heads, the voodoo doll heads, out of baseballs. But you can only go so far with that.
Right, and it's only 30 seconds they can spend on it.
All right, that's it for this week. I've been Joe Koblitz at Burning River BB. He's been Whole Lotta at JL_baseball. You can read us both at burningriverbaseball.com, and you should, because we're better than Hoynesy. I'm just going to say it up straight. We are better than Hoynesy. Hoynesy. It's
Okay.
late. I'm tired. I'm tired because I watched 3 baseball games, and then I went home and watched a baseball game, and I'm tired. It's like Saturday.
World problems.
Watch 3 baseball games, and then I go and watch a baseball game. I didn't go to the AZL game tonight because it's just too much. It's too much baseball. Between it's Team USA, Indians. It's like
I don't know.
just constant baseball all day. So I'll have more AZL stuff next week.
When do they get to play a home game?
July 5th is going to be the AZL Indians' first home game at Goodyear Ballpark, and I will be there.
Awesome.
With my brand new camera and brand new tripod. And hopefully we'll be getting some nice pictures of a very nice-looking first baseman that I think is going to be my new favorite player ever.
Michael Cooper?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's fun.
To hear about Michael Cooper.
He's fun. He's fast. He hits the ball hard based on, like, one game.
So you're an expert now because you saw one game.
Let's do it. No, I off of that game, him and Alfonseca, I believe his name is, the outfielder.
Yeah, Pedro.
They were the 2 standouts in the game I saw. Obviously with Michael Tinsley as well, but Michael Tinsley isn't supposed to be at this level.
No. So
as soon as he moves up, he's gone. But there are some. The initial AZL roster scared me. It's better now. Now that they've got some draft picks in there, it should be much better. All right, we'll check you out next week. All-Star updates with injury news and the not, and you never know. Maybe the Indians will be 5 games up in the Central by then. We'll see you next time.